Welcome to this unit, AURAMA006, which is all about bridging the gap between the technical skills on the workshop floor and business skills. Just because you're a good technician won't give you the ability to be a good business person, but these skills that we teach you today will help you to be that good business manager that we want you to be. So, we're going to be looking at how to read the health of a business, spot opportunities for improvement, and then actually put those improvements into action. By the end of this, you'll understand not just how to fix a car, but how your business will be thriving. So moving ahead, throughout this unit, we'll be covering three main areas. First, we'll be looking at how to review a business plan and check its performance. Think of this as diagnosing the business itself. Second, we'll dive into how marketing and promotions work to bring customers through the door. And finally, we'll be focusing on seeking out opportunities for continuous improvement, which is the key to staying competitive in the automotive industry itself. Let's start with the first element. Before we can suggest any change or new ideas, we must first get a clear picture of the business's current strategy and how it's performing against its own targets. This section is all about analysts pulling apart and pulling back the bonnet on the business to see how well it's doing and what parts are working together. And so this is what's important. So what exactly is a business plan? The simplest way to think about it is as a roadmap for the business. It's a formal document that lays out the company's goals and the specific strategies it will use to reach those goals. It forces a business to think about its current position, its future ambitions, and a step-by-step action required to bridge the gap. I could ask you guys, have you ever seen a business plan before, or where you're working, have they shown you their business plan? But business plans are very important and are very needed for a successful business. So moving on, it's critical to understand the difference between goals and key performance indicators, or as we use the acronym KPIs. A goal is the big picture. It's a destination, what the business ultimately wants to achieve. Whereas a KPI is a specific measurable number that acts like a gauge, say on your car's dashboard. It tells you if you're on track to reach your destination. For example, we're going to be doing a case study. You'll see this in your assessment AT2, but this case study focuses on a business called Auto Fix Garage. Their goal might be to increase profitability, but their KPI, it is specific targets achieved. And say it's got 80%, it wants to achieve 80% customer retention, and it might have an annual revenue it wants to reach of, say, 500,000. So that's the goal, okay? That's the goal. And we have to measure that goal to see that we reach that target. So this is what the KPIs do. That gives us a tool to measure. So moving on to the next slide. Let's look closer at the key sections of a typical business plan. Each part has a specific job. Think of it like the vehicle inspection report. You have a certain section for the engine, one for the brakes, one for the tyres. Here we have sections for finance, for marketing, and so on. So in your first assessment, you'll need to identify these key features. So it's important to know that they are to know what they are and what they do. So make sure we take note here, guys. So, a business plan isn't just one single thing. There are different types of planning for different types of needs. Before committing resources, a feasibility study checks if the idea can even work. The strategic plan is your long-term roadmap. The operational plan is how to do, the manual for your daily activities, like the scenario in your assessment about setting up a new diagnostic bay, which you'll learn about when you do your assessment. It also covers financial and marketing plans. So that's another set of plans. These marketing plans and financial plans are focus strategies for managing money and attracting customers. You'll need to know the purpose of each of these for your assessment task 1. Good goals are structured the SMART framework, S-M-A-R-T framework. We've heard this before if you've been with me for a while, but the SMART framework helps us to turn a vague wish into an accountable target. For instance, in your assessment 1, you're asked for a set of goals for a new workshop. A weak goal is, say, for example, making a profit. Anyone can say, we want to make a profit. But a SMART goal is, how do we achieve to make this profit? It gives us a reason and a how to do it. So, we need to achieve something. And it's specific, measurable. In the first 12 months, which is a timely period, by structuring, say, 20 regular service clients, which is achievable, which will establish our customer base, which is relevant. So if we look at S is for specific, M is for measurable, A is for achievable, R is for relevant, and T is for time bound. So we need to have our goals set so that it's specific to our business, but at the same time, we can measure it so we know we're on track. But we also it needs to be achievable. We might say we want to make 100% profit, but that's not really achievable, because to do that, we need a bigger premises, we need more staff, we need more resources. That's not achievable. We need things that are achievable. And then, we need it to be relevant so that it's related to what we're doing in our business. It's no good saying, I think I'll cook some cakes for my customers, but that's not relevant to our automotive fixing cars, I guess. I don't know, I'm being a little bit here out there. And, it needs to have a time. So we need to do something within a time. We want to be, we want 10% more customers this time in 6 months' time. So we work for that in the next few months till we achieve that. Okay. So that's what SMART goal setting is all about. Now, moving on. Okay. Spotting trouble. Okay. Now let's talk about identifying problems. A gap analyst is the first step. It simply means completing and comparing your plan to your actual performance. In your task 2, you will do exactly this by calculating the differences between AutoFix's Garage's targets and its actual results for the year. Risks are potential problems that could widen that gap. They can be strategic, financial, or operational, like equipment failure or supply chain issues. Things that directly impact a workshop ability to get the job done. So when we do our plans, okay, we need to have a backup that, if things go wrong, and we need to think what could go wrong. And these things are called risks. And these risks we need to plan for. And so that when they do, and we hope they don't happen, but when they do happen, we actually have a plan for that so we can get through that problem that we have. So that's very important to have a plan for the gap if something goes wrong. Moving on. Once you've identified risks, you need a process to manage them. It's a continuous circle. You identify potential hazards, like the staff shortage at AutoFix Garage faced. You assess the likelihood and impact. You then put controls in place, like cross-training staff or having backup suppliers. Finally, you review to make sure your plans is working. This proactive approach is what risk management is all about. I used to lose staff at once when I had my business. I used to send them out for training all the time to get trained up well so they could be good at diagnosing problems and perform well. But they'd see an opportunity then because they were a bit more skilled in things, and they would move on and go somewhere else with that skill, and I'd lose all those hours of training that I paid for. And I got the idea this is not working. So I went to school and I did a lot of homework and a lot of learning to really get up to date with the modern cars back in the day. And with that knowledge, I then did my own training. So my thinking was, at least I wouldn't lose all that money I spent, in the sense that, I've worn the cost myself and I can repeat that when I get new staff. But I found once I became more knowledgeable, my staff were learning a lot from me, and that made them want to stay. And I didn't lose my staff like I was. And so, what started out with a plan for my risk if I lost staff and I'd paid for all this money for training, and I'm thinking, I'm going to invest this money, but then it walks out of my door. Well, that is a fairly expensive cost for me, and I didn't want to have to keep on repeating that cost. So my thinking was, if I was to train them and I was a trainer, the cost is my time. My time still costs money, but it's not like I'm spending money outside my workplace. But what that did was instill this need for those staff to better themselves, continually because I could see my knowledge I had at that time. So it paid off. It paid off big dividends, better than I expected, and it actually solved 2 problems, not 1 problem. Moving on. It's important to know the difference between risk management and contingency planning. As you'll need this for your assessment task 2, risk management prevention. Checking your tire pressure before a long trip. A contingency plan is what you do when the tire blows out anyway. Knowing how to use a jack and to put on a spare tire. It's the pre-planned response to an unexpected event. In your assessment, you will be asked to create both risk management strategies and contingency fixes for auto fix garage. So in other words, a contingency plan is a plan when something really out of the ordinary goes wrong. Whereas a risk management plan is certain risks. We do preventative maintenance to stop these risks from becoming a contingency problem. So, it's a good example. All right. Now we move on to element 2, marketing. A workshop can have the best technician in the world, but if no one knows about it, it won't succeed. This section is about understanding how a business attracts customers, communicates its value, and convinces them to choose their service over their competitive. A business has many services, so it needs to be strategic about what it promotes. Do you focus on the high profit jobs like engine diagnosis, or the high volume jobs like basic servicing that keeps the workshop busy? Or maybe you promote something with greater upsell potential. For assessment 1, you'll be asked to analyse a workshop's services and justify which one would be the best to focus on for a marketing campaign. So think about these factors, okay? The marketing mix, often called the 4 Ps, is a fundamental concept to be successful and have to get all 4 elements, and you have to get all 4 elements right. You need to. So we've got products, pricing, place, and promotion. Products or services, what do we offer at the right price and in a convenient place and supported by effective promotion. If one of these is wrong, for example, a great service that's priced too high, the whole strategy can fail. This framework helps the business make sure all its bases are covered. Once a campaign is running, how do you know it's actually working? You must monitor it. This is about tracking the results to see if you're getting a good return on your investment. If an ad in a local paper costs $500 but only brings in 2 customers, is it worth it? Monitoring helps you to make data-driven decisions so that you can double down on what works and cut out what doesn't work. This links back to the KPIs we talked about before and earlier. You're evaluating the performance of your marketing against the objectives of what you receive from your advertising. Finally, we come to the element 3, continuous improvement. An automotive industry is consistently changing. New technologies, new competitors, new customers, expectations. The most successful businesses are the ones that are always looking for ways to get better, more efficient and more effective. This is an ongoing process, not a one-off time fix. And this is what I used to do in my business. I used to look for opportunities to better myself, to make myself stand out more than what the competitors I had around me would. And I think I picked diagnostics as one of those strategies. There's other things as well. But a lot of people in my area, a lot of workshops that is, my competitors, ended up coming to me with their problems because they didn't have the expertise or the equipment to properly diagnose modern cars. So, it worked for me, not only for my retail customers, but also for the workshops around me. So we have to think outside the box when we're running a business. Now, we're looking at improvement starts with reviewing. Reviewing, yes. On a strategic level, you and your supervisors should regularly discuss if the overall business plan is still on track. On an operational level, it's about looking at the day-to-day work. Could the workshop layout be more efficient? Is there a process that frustrates technicians and slows them down? Small changes in the workshop can lead to a big improvement in efficiency and in profitability. I can remember, the boys looking for their tools and that, so we needed an organised system at work where we had trolleys for them to reel their tools around in the workshop so they could bring the tools to their job. Those little things make a difference. When you have a great idea to improve operations or efficiency, you can't just pitch it on a whim. You need to formulate and you need to justify it. So in this case, in the business world, we call this a business case. Whether you are asking for new equipment, a new software subscription, or a change in workflow, a business case is what you use to prove that the expense is worth it to the company. Now, let's break it down. The core components you need to include. Using a practical workshop scenario. If you look at the document graphic on the left here on the slide, you'll see the core structure. Every solid business case covers 5 distinct areas. We talk about the problem, the solution, the costs, and the benefits. So let's look at the problem first. You have a clear state, a current issue. For example, we are losing critical billable time on complex vehicle diagnostics. So now we turn to the solution. You put down, this is your proposed fix. Instead of just complaining about this problem, you offer a strategy such as invest in targeted staff training and establish clear standard diagnostic procedures. But that comes at a cost. Be upfront about the numbers. Management needs to know the upfront hit. In this case, let's say it's $5,000 for a training program. But the benefits. This is your ultimate selling point. The return on investment, you need to show how this business will win. For instance, this training will save us 2 hours a week, meaning the investment completely pays for itself within 12 months. The risk, never hide the risk. I talked about my problem back in the day, so never hide this risk. Addressing them shows you've done your homework. A realistic risk here might be staff members could leave the business after receiving the training and take that specialised knowledge straight to your competitor. So, by structuring your ideas in this way, you take the emotions out of the request and present it as a logical, number-based backed argument that management can easily approve. So, before looking at how to format these documents, does anyone have any questions on how to calculate these business costs and benefits? If you do, contact me if you're watching this. So, now that you've built a solid numbers-backed business case, the final step is to pitch it. This slide focuses on getting the green light. The way you present your ideas to management is just as critical as the idea inside the document itself. As you can see from the image on the right of this slide, the outcome we want is a professional handshake, a shared understanding, and a clear path forward. So guys, that finishes our and completes our training on this subject, on this unit. So, just to recap, we have covered the element 1, how to review a business plan and its performance. And later we will look at a business plan and we're going to review that together as part of our class today. And element 2, how to assist with marketing to attract new customers. We need that. And we need to keep our customers too. Part of our marketing has to be, to keep our customers happy and satisfied and realising they're getting value from us. So, that's very important too. And element 3, how to improve the business continuously. So, remember that circle we saw on a previous slide of a continuous circle of improvement. We need to be always looking at how to improve. If we're not looking at improving ourselves, we will go backwards. So we need to be always on the upper foot, the front foot, and working for what is best for our business and how we can continue to improve not only our business, but even ourselves as we become better at our jobs. All right, thank you, folks. If there's any questions, please let me know. But yeah, it's been great to share this with you. Thank you.